Joining us is Piper Sandler, head of U.S. policy, Andy Laperriere. Andy, welcome. Game this out for us.
Yeah, well, I think as she was just saying, it's tough to know whether the vote's going to be tonight. But I think they're going to get there. This is the budget resolution. This is kind of the outline of the package. And there's a big difference between the House and the Senate package. There's going to be a lot to work out. But I think that you're going to find that Republicans, the conservatives and the moderates will end up going along over the, if it's not tonight, sometime over the next couple of days or weeks. I think, probably the biggest concern for Republicans is more the gadflies, which I think Massey is one of them. Victoria Sparse of Indiana is another, where they just, they just kind of just vote no. And so they can't afford to have more than one person vote no right now. So it's going to be tough, but I think they get there. And then, yeah, when you get to the House Senate conference, how big are the spending cuts and how much room do you make for new tax cuts? I think those are going to be the key questions they're going to have to answer.
Yeah, and of course, I always watch the market backdrop here. The fact that the 10-year's fallen a little bit, I don't know if that takes some pressure off. Market's not really reacting yet. When would you expect it to become more of a market-moving event?
Well, I think it's going to have to look like the package is really collapsing, and I don't think we're going to get to that point anytime soon. Certainly, look, the Republicans have their back against the wall, and Congressman Massey was just talking about how you're going to be adding to the deficit under this package. But if Congress doesn't pass anything, there's going to be a giant tax increase next year, and the 2017 tax cuts for individuals will expire, and that'll be a giant tax increase. And so they can't afford to do that. Their back's against the wall. They have to pass this package, and so I think they're going to find a way to do it.
Right. The problem is their margin is, 3 votes in the House. So what are they going to have to do to get everyone? I mean, that you lose one voice on the right, you lose one voice. And that's why I'm watching these comments from Trump about Medicaid very closely. He said in that interview with Musk the other night, Medicaid cuts are off the table.
Yeah, well, that's going to be a real interesting one, right? Because the president is saying that he's going to completely protect Medicaid, only waste, fraud, and abuse. On the other hand, the House budget kind of implicitly suggests that they're going to have to cut Medicaid by maybe $800 billion something in that range. So I think that number is going to have to come down, and they're going to say that work requirements and trying to get it the way the states game the system to pay less to basically inflate their Medicaid costs and get more money from the federal government, that's not really cutting anybody's benefit. That's just waste. So I think they'll be able to thread this needle, but they have basically, no room to spare. They can lose at this point 1 vote and still be able to get it done. And so this is going to be extremely challenging. And I think, a little bit more time consuming, whether it's tonight or, just getting it through the House or the House Senate conference. I think, it's going to just take some time to work it out because they're going to have to basically be unanimous in their agreement on this.
Yeah. And at the same time, then you would have to deal with the shutdown and however that is going to pan out or not. Andy, what would you say to those in our audience who look at this and go, okay, well, I want to be a fiscal hawk, right? I want there not to be a further increase or upward pressure on the deficit. I want to kind of, stop the debt from rising any further. But if you want to keep the tax cuts in place, how do you do that if you don't want to cut Medicaid? I mean, what do you tell those folks?
Well, I mean, this gets a little bit tricky, but, this is where this whole baseline issue comes into play. I mean, I really think as an investor, I think the way I'm looking at it and most investors are looking at it is, maintaining current law is not really a tax cut at this point. It doesn't really add to the deficit. It just leaves things the way they are. And so then the question is, on a going forward basis, what are you doing? So if there's new tax cuts, to what degree are you offsetting that with spending cuts? And I think the way this package is going to turn out is it's going to essentially be an extension of the Trump tax cuts with a bunch of important changes beneath the surface that on net, though, keep the deficit basically where it is. So there's some new tax cuts, but there's some new tax increases. There's some spending cuts.
But
there's higher interest costs.
So